Hello, this is Andrine, a Jewish American priestess, and I'm coming to you right near the month of Tammuz, the Rosh Chodesh of Tammuz, as well as the summer solstice, which come into conjunction this coming week. So they're very close together, the new moon and the solstice this year. And we're going to do a reading today about this coming season, this time of the summer in the hemisphere where I live. It is winter time in the southern hemisphere, which is where the tradition of these particular cards come from. This is the Dreamtime Reading cards from the Australian continent. So I'm going to shuffle. I'm going to pull out 3 cards, and we're going to do 3 separate readings today with the Hebrunes using these Dreamtime Oracle cards. Let's see what is up. There's 1. Here is number 2. And we're just going to be doing a 3 Hebrune spread today. There's the 3rd one. Okay, let's turn them over. And you can discern which of these is calling to you to lead you into your reading today. And then I'll put the timestamps down below so that you can find your way directly to your reading. So for card number 1, we have Moth, Shadow Self. And that is card number 22. For card number 2, we have Freshwater Turtle with Versatility, card number 15. And for card number 3, we have the Gumnut Blossom, Contentment, and that is card number 18. And we'll go into what each of these cards means in the separate readings, but take a moment to discern which of these cards is speaking to you, calling you forward, whether it's Moth, Shadow Self, Freshwater Turtle with Versatility, or Gumnut Blossom with Contentment. I'll put the timestamps down below, and I will see you in your reading. Welcome, card number 1. This is your card. It looks like this with the moth and the moon. And it has the number 22 at the top, as well as the words Shadow Self at the bottom. And I'm going to read from the book about this card. Moth, Shadow Self. The Bowen moth played a major part in the diet of some traditional peoples of Australia. It is a very large moth, almost as long as your hand. The moths gather together at certain times of the year to mate and lay their eggs. Many language groups would join together to feast on these moths, which were a fantastic food source, full of good fats and proteins when they were in season. It is because of the Bowen moth that was so important in the traditional diet of some Aboriginal people that it was shared communally. This needed a high level of trust between different groups and also tolerance of each other's differences. The moth as a messenger is associated with hidden meanings and information. It also represents your shadow self, or those parts of yourself you prefer not to show others. Because the moth is a nocturnal insect and is able to see in the darkness and gravitates toward light, it asks you to be honest about what inner fears or issues you are being encouraged to bring forward into the light. A moth looks dull until the moon or light illuminates the shine of the silver dust coating its wings, allowing its true magic and beauty to be seen. Okay, so shadow self, moth. We're going to set this off to the side here where we can see it being illuminated by the candle like the moon. And we're going to pull out 3 Hebrunes today in order to discern what message we have for this upcoming month of Tammuz and the summer solstice. At the top, we have the letter Vav. In the center, we have the letter Gimel. And at the bottom, we have the letter Tet. Okay. So right off the bat, as I'm looking at this reading, what I'm seeing is connection. Vav is the letter that means connection. It literally means and in Hebrew. It is standing tall with slight humility and connecting with the divine above, as well as rooting deep into the earth below, as well as connecting with others. So our central issue in our reading today is the idea of connection, which seems really appropriate with the moth, because the moth, as we read, speaks to diverse peoples coming together to share in some experience that's very nutritious. Nutrition in spiritual dimension speaks to spirituality, about the idea that when one dreams about food, for instance, in the dream world, we're talking about nourishment, spiritual nourishment coming in. So we have this idea of coming together in connection in order to ingest this moth and maybe digest our spiritual self. And Vav is that connection letter. It's about a sense of hearing as well, so listening, having the different languages that are coming together, being able to hear each other, and connecting. The Vav is said to be a peg or a hook, so it's something that tethers a tent to the ground or connects the veils around the Holy of Holies, so that that inner space, that shadow space, that secret self is protected spiritually. And it is the number 6 in Gematria. And the number 6 speaks to the final day of creation, of active creation. There are 7 days of creation, but on the final day, that was a day of rest. So this is about the last day of creation having action to it. And in that sense, it speaks to something almost being completed. There's something that's about to come to an end here. And maybe it's something that we haven't looked at very hard yet because of the shadowy nature of the moth here. The Vav corresponds to the Lover's card in tarot in my reading of the Hebrunes. So it does have to do with connection, a connection of 2 or more people, maybe loving of oneself, but also possibly an actual loving connection between intimate partners or some other loved one in your life. That is what's up right now. That there's some connection piece, that there's something that is hidden that needs to be revealed that is coming up right now in this time. The central letter in our reading is in this spread having to do with what's the challenge or fear in our situation. And we have the letter Gimel here. The letter Gimel, which is a camel or a foot. So it is about forward movement. It is about walking slowly but consistently toward or away from something. And since we're having this idea of a connection happening and a finality of a thing coming toward the end, I think that the Gimel is speaking to something going away from something, having to walk away from something that's challenging. The Gimel corresponds to the binary transformation of peace and evil. And in this situation, perhaps we've got a choice to make between what is peaceful and what is volatile or not working out. So what is whole and what is broken. The Gimel is the first letter of the word Gan Eden, which means the Garden of Eden, which is that place where we had to choose between the tree of life and the tree of knowledge. That tree of knowledge is that being able to discern between what is whole and what is broken, what is peaceful and what is evil. So that's the challenge right now. There's something big that's up, and I say big because Gimel also corresponds to the planet Jupiter in the sky, Jupiter being the largest planet in our solar system. And the word Jupiter in Hebrew is tzedek, which means justice. So something large and something just needs to come to completion, and possibly needs some movement, either towards something peaceful or away from something that is broken. So that's our challenge right now, this travel, that's traversing. And with that, we move into the final letter of the reading. In this reading, the final letter is the potential outcome given the current circumstances. And as always, any circumstances are transmutable. In this particular reading, what we're seeing is the letter Tav at the final position, and that's incredibly appropriate. It is the final letter of the alphabet. And it speaks to a completion, a seal, a stamp, a signature, something that is brought to an end. It's the final letter of the alphabet. So after all of creation has been written with each of the letters, this is that sign, that chop that goes at the end of that piece of art that has been created by the divine. It's this finality. It's the last letter of the word emet, which means truth. So something is coming to completion. Some truth is being signed into being. And it's this impression as well, like as if the generations of the past, the ancestors, have been imprinted on our own DNA as we manifest their completion of their work in our lives. So there's something here about an ending, a finality, a transformation too. Very frequently, endings are frightening, but they also speak to new beginnings as well. They say that the letter looks a little bit like a dalet and a nun, which spells the word din, meaning judgment. And to that end, interestingly, after following the Gimel with justice in tzedek, the planet Jupiter, din being judgment, is appropriate ending to whatever justice is being brought into place here. The letter Tav also ruling over the moon in the sky. So there's something beautiful about that, having the moon in this card and that moon illuminating the shadow self in the moth. So we have the letter ruling over the moon, which is about the unconscious, the shadow self, and the intuition. That's what's coming through this, with this connection piece that's up right now, this almost finality to our situation. That the challenge is whatever is moving forward, whatever transformation needs to happen through travel, whether somebody is coming in or going away. And I get the sense in this particular reading that it's about someone leaving, that the finality of it is something is coming to an end, and that's a good thing, and that will put a stamp or a seal on our situation with justice, with a judgment that is that finality, and will bring to light the shadow of the situation. So for those of you who chose the moth, this has been your reading for today. I hope that it has been illuminating for you, like the moon shining on the wings of the moth, and that you have a beautiful transformation of season as spring comes to an end here in the northern hemisphere, and our new season comes in, the summer up here, and the winter in the south. And I will see you here next time. Shavua Tov. Hello, card number 2. For those of you who chose Freshwater Turtle, which is card number 15. Our keyword is versatility here. And this is what our card looks like. I'm going to go ahead and read what it says about the freshwater turtle in this booklet. The freshwater turtle survives in two very different elements. It needs water to live in and air to breathe. There are many different species of freshwater turtle, ranging from very small, that are only a few centimeters long, to very long turtles that are larger than dinner plates. The turtle is a very practical reptile. It carries its home around on its back, and it can retreat inside any time it needs to. Because it is of this practicality and its versatility that the turtle's message is one of being adaptable. No one will ever feel comfortable in every environment. Everyone has an environment that they are best suited to. But the turtle encourages you to find what you need to be able to thrive in whatever environment you find yourself in right now. Remember to breathe deeply and find your inner safe place before venturing out of your shell. But be assured, you have got this far, and you can adapt and thrive even in hostile terrain. You may have to change the way you do things, or be willing to experience new things, but you will be able to adapt and move forward. Versatility. Okay. Well, let's pull out some Hebrunes, and we're going to do 3 today, and see what further clarification we can get. I'm going to put our freshwater turtle up here. At the top we have the letter Vav. In the center we have the letter Kaf. And at the bottom we have the letter Ayin. So the way we read these is the top letter is our current situation, the center our challenge, and the bottom is our outcome letter. And interestingly, the Vav was the same letter that came up in this same position in the first reading. So it's about connection. It's about connecting to others. You can see that it is tall and as if one is standing, but with their head slightly bent. So a little humility, reaching up with connection toward divinity and grounding oneself deep into the earth. It is the letter that means and, literally, in Hebrew. So big connection piece today, and as somebody who is working with versatility, there may be a need for versatility in the connection that you are working with right now, whatever your sense of that is. It is a hook or a peg, so it tethers a tent to the ground and connects the veils around the Holy of Holies in that central space. It's about unity with divinity, as well as unity with one's own self and with others. So a lot of connection going on. The letter Vav is the number 6 in Gematria. It is about the 6 directions. So north, south, east, west, up and down. I can see those laid out here on this card. So as the divine created over the course of 7 days, the 6th day was the last day of active creation, and the 7th day was the day of rest. So something is almost coming to an end. Something is almost completed here in the letter Vav. And that is our current situation. There's some connection piece that's important. There's some near finality that is important. Apparently a need for versatility in the situation. I see Vav as corresponding to the Lover's card in tarot. So it has to do with union and connection with oneself, the divine, and others. And our central Hebrune is the letter that represents the challenge in our situation. And we have the letter Kaf. The letter Kaf is a palm of a hand. So it has to do with giving and receiving. And so that certain exchange that goes on about whether one is giving enough or too much, whether one is asking for too much or not asking for help enough, and coming to balance with that idea of exchange of giving and receiving. The letter Kaf also has to do with the palm of a hand being an oppressive symbol. So it could be that there's giving and receiving happening, but it could be that there's oppression or some kind of suppression that is happening. It is the first letter of the word koach, which means power. So there is this idea of the potentiality for power being wielded in a negative way. And since it is in the position of the challenge of our situation, I'm guessing that it has to do with that negative oppression or power being used inappropriately. It is the letter that rules over the sun in the sky. And so as we come into the summer season, we are both needing to shelter ourselves from the sun and also use the sun appropriately for growth in our situation. The sun has that dual nature of being our life force source for this planet, as well as causing potential damage if we do not shelter ourselves appropriately. And the turtle is one who is about shelter. It's somebody who, like I said, carries their home on their back. So they have shelter with them wherever they go. They can just pull themselves inside and remain safe. In this metaphor of having a very powerful source that then may require shelter, I'm thinking that the turtle's versatility is really important here. Being able to discern when it's appropriate to be in the sun and when it's appropriate to hide from the sun itself with some kind of shade. The kaf also represents the Shekhinah sometimes, where the Shekhinah's hand is lifting us up, or the wings of Shekhinah are sheltering us from whatever is coming to harm us. With the versatility and the turtle, that seems really appropriate, that we have this guidance and this guardian that stays with us wherever we go. The Shekhinah is like the shell of the turtle, in that she is always there with us and for us, regardless of our paying attention to it. It's just part of us. We have that within us. So we need to remember that that shelter exists wherever we go. That's our challenge right now. Something is oppressive. Something is perhaps we need shelter from something that is harming us. And that we need to remember that the Shekhinah is that shelter with us wherever we go. And our final letter is the letter Ayin at the bottom of our reading. And it is the letter that represents an eye. It's a little bit funny, but you can see that it looks like two eyeballs and an eye stalk coming back to the optic nerve inside the head. And it is about, if you look at it this way, it kind of looks like a eye wearing makeup as well. It's about being able to see one's way forward, and also being watched over by the divine. So being able to see what the next step is in this completion position, that's really wonderful. It's also the number 70. And 70 is a finality letter, because 7 is the number of days of creation, and 10 times 7 is this ultimate manifestation of a completion. Something is coming to an end very strongly here. That we have the ability to see our way forward, and that we know that everything is coming to an end. In a good way. I mean, it is the letter that corresponds to the tribe of Dan, which is judgment. Judgment is sometimes difficult, but it is just, ideally. And so I see the Ayin as corresponding to the judgment card in tarot, which is about a rite of passage, about a transition, about reviewing what has come before and coming to a finality about it. And with judgment, there is an ability for renewal and new beginnings. So we have this sight, this eye watching over us and protecting us, as well as ability to see our way forward. So as we are in this position of connection and struggling with whatever connection is, whatever oppression is happening, we need to remember to take the time to trust in the protection we have from Shekhinah as a shell, as someone who is watching over and protecting us. And that will bring us through to the ability to see our way forward and come to a satisfying judgment and conclusion of our situation. And remembering to remain versatile within this situation, and that we have that protection and shell with us wherever we go. So for those of you who chose Freshwater Turtle, this has been your reading today. I hope you found it useful, that you have a beautiful transition from the month of Sivan into the month of Tammuz, as well as a transition from the season you're in to the season you're moving into. In our case, spring to summer, but in the southern hemisphere, from fall into winter. Have a beautiful day. Shavua Tov. Hello, card number 3, people. This is your card, the Gumnut Blossom. It is card number 18, and it stands for Contentment. I love that it's number 18 because, of course, in Hebrew, the number 18 spells the word chai, which means life. I'm going to read you what it says in the book here about contentment. The gum tree, or eucalyptus, often blossoms best after a period of harshness. After bushfires or periods of long drought, the gumnuts burst into flower in an assortment of colors. Many of the blossoms smell and taste like honey, and it is because of this that they are often associated with contentment and the sweet things in life. The gumnut blossom bursts forth with its message of happiness and contentment. It can symbolize a period of success after a difficult or challenging time. This is time to celebrate your success and enjoy a period of lightheartedness and progress. Sometimes you can forget to enjoy these periods of contentment and sweetness because you're too busy worrying about what is still to come. At this time, the gumnut blossom asks you not to worry about what the future holds, but instead gives thanks for the situation you currently find yourself in. Appreciate the people around you, smile and laugh, and share the sweetness of your harvest with those you love. The color of gumnut blossoms can also give you insight into what areas you have made progress in. Gumnut contentment. So, we're going to pull out 3 Hebrew letters. I'm going to set the gumnut blossom off to the side here, where we can enjoy it. And let's pull out 3 letters to get some clarification. At the top of our reading, we have the Ein Sof. In the center, we have the letter Mem. And at the bottom, the letter Aleph. Beautiful. Okay, wow. So at the top, we have the letter that is no letter. It's the Ein Sof. And the Ein Sof is that without end. It is a blank. I'll hold it up, show you both sides. It is the blank that is like a 0. It is meaning unendingness, that without end, the void. I see it as that primordial material onto which everything is carved. Every letter is carved into a blank. And so it has to do with timelessness, that tohu vavohu, which is the void that came before all of creation, primordial chaos, or the tahom, the deep. And boundlessness, that ability to find the eternal in everything. So on some level, it represents the divine themselves, the infinite. And that time before time, as we know from physics and science, there was a time before time existed. There was a time before space existed. And that is what the Ein Sof represents, that when all of everything was divinity in our tradition, all of existence and matter and time that existed before creation is that oneness, or that zeroness, that before there was a one. And there was this idea in creation that the divine had to contract themselves down to one point in order to make space for things to be created. And so that contraction piece is called Tzimtzum. There's a name of the divine that is Queen Tzimtzumai, another name for the Shekhinah, which is she who makes space. And I love that as a part of a contraction, because a contraction is what happens before birth, right? So everything comes in and then bursts forward. So that's what the Ein Sof represents, that boundlessness that happens before time, the eternal, and the beingness of all. And that's the situation we're in right now with contentment. And I love that. With contentment, we can be content in the knowledge that despite any challenges that are going on right now in our lives, that all came from oneness and will return to oneness. Our challenge in the situation, our central letter, is the letter Mem. And the letter Mem is the mother letter of water. You can see that it looks like a container with a small opening at the bottom. And to that end, it represents a womb. It represents the uterus in the body of the mother. And so it is a mother letter. It's about that amniotic fluid in which we are all born, like the oceanic vastness. It is the deep. It's that home, that deep watery space that is reflected in the Ein Sof. And it's about birth. It's about creation. It's about gestation. So being in the center position where we have this time of maybe challenge or fear, it sounds like we're gestating something that is challenging to just wait and hold space for is here. And we have, if anybody has given birth, you can attest to how difficult that can be. Both the waiting for the birth to happen, as well as the birth itself, which requires that contraction, which requires a very intense period of both carrying something inside you that you're birthing or creating, whether that be physical or metaphysical, and then the actual process of bringing it into the world. And it's said in the reading about the Gumnut blossom, we do have this challenge of things being very difficult before the gumnuts come into blossom, that there's a harsh time that happens. And ideally, this will be a positive experience in the end. But right now, it might seem really, really hard to be holding, be waiting to have that time of gestation. That the Mem represents emotion as well because of that wateriness. And so there is a certain amount of grief that may be tied up in that, or tears having to do with the water that comes with emotion. Maybe tears of happiness, but also tears of grief. It is the number 40 in Gematria, and 40 represents that 40 weeks of gestation in the human body. Also the 40 years in the wilderness that we as a people endured wrestling with the divine. So there's a lot of symbolic ideas in that number 40. 40 days of rain in the story of Noah, where the rains came and the earth was flooded, destroying everything except for this one family. There's 40 days on the mountain Sinai when Moshe went up to receive Torah, to receive the utterances of the divine. And that time period was very frightening, I think, both for the people who were waiting for him, as well as for Moshe himself. Moshe, which begins with the letter Mem, as well as the name Miriam, who is one of the early priestesses of our people, who had this magical well that followed her around, so she was able to provide nourishment and sustenance in that desert time. So the Mem has all of this wrapped up in it, and it is the belly in the body where our wombs are held, or where we get that gut feeling about a thing. So whatever challenge is going on here, right in the center of us, this idea of the waters of life, the Mayim Chaim, as well as the challenges of gestation, just holding, creating something inside of us, and then giving birth. All really, really challenging right now. But ideally coming through to contentment, according to your card here, with the number 18, that Chai, that Mayim Chaim again. And our final outcome letter we have is the letter Aleph, which is the number 1. It is the first letter of the alphabet. And you can see that the Aleph has a Yud above and a Yud below, Yud being the first letter of the name of the divine, with a Vav between, Vav meaning and, the connection between heaven and earth, the connection between the divine and ourselves, the connection between ourselves and another. And it is oneness. It is that coming together of all things. And that first letter that is carved into the Ein Sof. It is also a mother letter. It's the mother letter of air and breath. And that balance of above and below, wind, which is happening in great amounts right now outside my window. Both the rain and the wind are picking up as I'm doing this reading, and it's just quite lovely and amazing. We have this idea of liminal space, this crossroads, where we're having to make a decision. Which direction do we go as we walk forward? And it's regarding the chest and the lungs in the body. So from where I'm sitting, it feels very much like it would be important to breathe right now. Take some time to find our breath and to find our contentment in our body. Aleph is the first letter of most of the names of the divine in Torah. The El Elyon, Elohim, Adonai. But it's also the first letter of the word Adam, Adamah, mud, earth, and human. So we have that within us, that Aleph, that oneness, that breath, the breath of the divine. It gives us life. It keeps us alive until we stop drawing breath. And it gives us the ability to find contentment, just focusing on breath as we are trying to work our way through. When one is giving birth, oftentimes there are special breathing techniques we use in order to endure the contractions that occur so that we can give birth to what we need to give birth to. So this is a beautiful reading for those of you who chose Gumnut Blossom 18, Contentment. Our current situation is the unknown. It is the endlessness and the boundlessness, and maybe the contentment in knowing that all will return to that space of unendingness. Right now, our challenge being gestation, waiting it out, and giving birth, emotions, difficult transitions, and it brings us back to oneness. It brings us back to the oneness of divinity, our oneness with ourselves, our oneness with the universe, and ideally contentment in our breath. So for those of you who chose Contentment, the Gumnut Blossom, this has been your reading as you transition from one season to the next, from one day to the next, from one moment to the next, from 1 month to the next, from the waning moon to the waxing moon. I wish you a beautiful transition. Shavua Tov, Chodesh Tov, and we will see you here next time.